Ed Miliband was left squirming as he was grilled on if he personally backs the Heathrow expansion. The Labour government will support a third runway in a bid to boost growth, but the Energy Secretary has been a fierce critic of the proposals in the past. Asked by BBC Breakfast if he was for the plans or just going along with the crowd, the Cabinet Minister said, "I'm part of a government that has said it wants to invite applications from Heathrow for a third runway. It's got to pass strict environmental conditions and meet our carbon budgets. Obviously I'm part of the government and I abide by collective responsibility." Pressed on if that meant he was for a third runway, Mr. Miliband added, "Well yes, I'm part of a government that has that position." Pushed again, he went on, "I'm not obfuscating. I was part of the decision-making process and the decision is as Rachel Reeves set it out, that's the collective decision of the government." Mr. Miliband voted against Heathrow expansion in a Commons vote in June 2018. Expanding Heathrow to build a third runway was among a throng of major projects Chancellor Rachel Reeves said the government would support in a speech last week aimed at unlocking economic growth across the UK. But senior Labour figures, including some of her cabinet colleagues, and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, have opposed expansion plans in the past. Here is a summary of internet users' reactions. What Britain needs is a can-do attitude, not the incessant negativity as displayed on this forum. Most people come on here and comment on the basis of WHO is speaking rather than what they are saying. Take this Heathrow expansion proposal for example. If it were Farage making this proposal, most people on here would be enthusiastically supporting it. However, because it's the Labour government, they are finding potential problems. Even to the extent of bringing up the question of carbon pollution despite most being climate deniers and fervently against net zero. Britain needs growth. Growth requires investment in infrastructure. So if you perceive problems with a particular proposal, suggest solutions. For example, with Heathrow it could be around the possibility of using cleaner fuels for aircraft. Miliband's net zero, not allowing new oil/gas fields, we will have to buy in the oil needed to keep the wind turbines turning. I am sure everyone has seen pictures of oil leaks from turbines, and for those that don't really think about them, they need oil to keep the cogs running smoothly. Ed Miliband's Department for Energy Scrutiny and Net Zero members have flown over 1,130 flights, culminating in over 3.2 million miles last year. Keir Starmer also flew 470 delegates to COP29 over 5,000 miles away to Baku, Azerbaijan, a major oil/gas producer. How's GB Energy coming along? Have they even got a telephone number yet? Well, when this first came out regarding Heathrow Airport expansion, it was stated that if Rachel Reeves and this government went ahead, he would resign. I do not like the left-wing so-called MP, for he will raise normal working people pay more for their energy, which had been announced also a few days ago. He is destroying this country. What I think of him is, I listened to Mr. Miliband on BBC and LBC and he just evaded all of the questions. The Rosebank oil and gas field on hold. He said he is quite happy for tankers to transport it from the US when Rosebank is ours on our doorstep. Do you think other countries will reduce their oil and destroy their economy? This is great. The Express and its readers spent 14 years watching the Tories involve themselves in a series of vicious knife fights over policy and leadership, with barely a comment. Now, every time they detect a less than 100% agreement in the Labour government, the Civil War headlines start to appear. To try to remember, folks, government is a collective thing. There's always going to be the odd dissenter, and they either win their argument or they lose it, and then they carry on. I'm worried that Miliband, along with all other ministers, believe their own rhetoric. If he had any scientific understanding, he would know that Heathrow expansion will increase carbon emissions and not meet a fudged carbon budget. He ignores the fact that we need electricity when there is no wind and when it is dark. He blames high energy costs on fossil fuel prices, but that is the government's pricing policy and green tax giving us the highest cost in Europe. Had the last Conservative government invested in infrastructure projects and the public services, they may still be in power. Instead, they went for tax cuts for the wealthy and by freezing the personal tax limit increased tax for the poorest in society, including us pensioners. The air travel isn't exactly thriving and I don't see any indicators of growth. It seems to me Labour is looking for a big project involving a lot of money, and we all know how the story will go thereafter. Create economic growth first and air travel will improve to support the growth and travels for leisure. If we don't have economic growth, what's the point of having a bigger airport? Miliband, you should really resign. You are adamant that you will close the North Sea, the car industry and farming, all because of some delusion that this will meet some targets that are political calculated meaningless numbers with no impact on climate. You have opposed this runway for years, so now you accept it to stay in your job. These other projects are just virtue signaling too, and you will change your mind if it looks like you will fail. You are way behind on turbines and they won't be the future global solution anyway. In fact, Miliband the runway is probably the wrong decision anyway. If Reeves believes that list of old tired projects will bring growth after 2035, she doesn't understand the problem or how the economy works. If you think a growing booming UK will need more air links, then far better to build a new airport away from congested West London rather than a runway at Heathrow. Brexit hasn't failed, but the UK is going skint since we left the EU for no obvious reason. Let's rejoice that we're not in the poo like Germany. Well, German trade data out this morning shows their latest monthly balance of trade was a higher than expected and healthy €20.7 billion surplus for the month. The UK's last monthly balance of trade? That was a deficit of minus £4.8 billion for the month. German debt/GDP 62%, UK debt/GDP 101%. Supply-side constrictions in the UK economy were pointed to yesterday by the BOEMPC, that's the pachyderm in the corner. Mr. Miliband answer questions directly with transparency and integrity instead of the party line. Unfortunately you were well trained by Mr. Blair, a misleading big smile, all words. Miliwat was on the lunchtime news, had to wonder what planet he is living on because he is completely out of touch with reality. Well, he doesn't drive an EV that preacher, and it now seems he doesn't go on holes, must go round and round on his bicycle all day. Sounds more like head jazz band has heard about possible reshuffling. Is he worried about his own job so needs to go along with it now? This whole third runway issue is nothing more than a feeble attempt by Labour to divert attention away from the sorry mess they have created. One extra runway will in no way even a partial cure for the UK's dire financial position, no matter how much as Rachel Reeves wishes it to be. Red Ed has in the past voted against any extension, so has his position changed? Has he done what his Capitan Swivel does, which is to flick ready for flop? The whole of the Labour Party now seem to have Capitan Swivel's problem. Porsche have just announced their numbers, not good. They've also announced the petrol engine is not dead and is planning to manufacture into the far future. Sales of battery cars in Germany fell 30% last year. Nobody wants them. If everything goes electric for zero net, what would happen if something disastrous happened and the whole of the UK had a complete energy blackout? All things stop working. So how can it be justifiable to do what Miliband wants? Pure madness. Thank goodness he was never PM. Talk about side swerving. Bis pension and salary and freebies will be his centre of attention. If he stood by his beliefs, he would resign. If we reach the fabled targets, when is the climate going to change? When is the fabled sea level rise going to be reversed? If not, then what the hell are we all suffering for? Trying to please everyone by a government decision can sometimes please none by what could result. It'd be understandable if CO2 was a problem, but actually it's not. It doesn't take much research to realize that fact.